Good morning, I'm Diana Macedo. We're coming on the air with a major development in the search for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie.
Possible Nancy Guthrie ransom note told CNN it was clear after a couple of sentences that it might not be a hoax.
Day 24, and Nancy Guthrie is still missing. And in
search for Nancy Guthrie and the new video being analyzed by investigators. It comes as the FBI is...
Right now, I do want to take you out to some of the big stories that we are covering, and we do have the latest on the search for Nancy Guthrie.
35 days. That's how long Nancy Guthrie has been missing. 35 mornings without a phone call, 35 nights without answers. And now, investigators say something important has changed. A glove discovered miles from her home, DNA inside it. For a moment, detectives thought they might finally have their first break, but then the results came back, and the answer raised even more questions, because the DNA didn't belong to a suspect. It belonged to someone who, according to investigators, had nothing to do with the case. So now the investigation is back where it started, an elderly woman gone without a trace, a masked figure captured on camera, and a timeline that still refuses to make sense.
The DNA on the glove that was found 2 miles away was submitted for CODIS, and I just heard that CODIS had no hits.
The Range Rover forensics, or the purchase trail. Now let's follow the evidence. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old.
Now most people are familiar with the broad outline of what happened. Nancy Guthrie disappears from her Tucson home. Bloodman random passerby would typically understand. It suggests familiarity, either with the property itself.
But on day 35, authorities revealed several new developments, some hopeful, some frustrating, that may reshape how investigators understand what happened on the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared. The question now is simple: are investigators getting closer? Or are they still chasing shadows? Before the investigation, before the press conferences, before the cameras lined the quiet streets of Tucson, there was Nancy. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old. Friends describe her as thoughtful, deeply spiritual, and devoted to her family. She lived in the Catalina foothills area outside Tucson, a place known for its quiet roads, desert landscapes, and tight-knit neighborhoods.
Disappearance. They're also working to prioritize which leads to follow after receiving more than 18,000 calls in this case.
And these pills are her lifeline. Think about it. Any kidnapper smart enough to disable a security system knows a dead hostage pays $0.
Teams were seen walking roadways around Tucson and the Catalina foothills, scouring for clues in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Special Agent Lance Lysing says the video images could be the key to helping investigators break the case.
Authorities in Arizona say the DNA submitted for FBI testing in the search for Nancy Guthrie.
Her days followed a familiar rhythm: a morning coffee, church services, often virtual, calls with friends and family. And that routine rarely changed, which is why the moment she didn't show up for church on February 1st immediately felt wrong. Nancy was the mother of NBC Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie. But those who knew her say she preferred a quieter life away from national attention. She wasn't a public figure. She was simply a mother, a friend, and a neighbor. And that's what made her disappearance so unsettling, because people like Nancy don't usually vanish, especially not from their own home.
To match if the individual had a previous arrest for certain crimes and supplied a DNA sample that put him into the system.
3 weeks since Nancy Guthrie was taken from her Tucson home, investigators are still searching for clues.
Confirmation, remember there were those 2 surveillance photos which you just had on your screen, the one where he has the backpack on and the one where the person does not have the backpack on.
Your main takeaway on this story right now, what would the FBI be looking at right now?
Imagine a pool of blood drying on a quiet Arizona porch, and right next to it, a discarded bottle of heart medication. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old.
Within days, the disappearance drew national attention. Local deputies, state investigators, the FBI, all working together. Authorities believe Nancy may have been taken from her home against her will, but proving that has been difficult. There was no immediate suspect, no confirmed vehicle, no clear escape route. And while investigators discovered multiple sources of DNA around the home, none immediately identified a perpetrator. According to investigators, the DNA samples were mixed, meaning they contained genetic material from more than one person. That makes analysis slower, more complicated, sometimes weeks or months longer.
Video. Likely the FBI's Phoenix division is in contact with big box stores and retailers in that area.
Liz, first of all, just thoughts on the video update we just heard there from Savannah, and remind us where the investigation stands right now.
Is Nancy Guthrie inside this speeding car? A Ring camera not far from her home captured this video the night of her kidnapping.
What happened to Nancy Guthrie? It's the question that still hasn't been answered now 12 days after she vanished.
But even with forensic teams working around the clock, the biggest challenge remained the timeline. Because the moment Nancy disappeared, sometime between late January 31st and the morning of February 1st, remains only partially understood, and every unanswered minute matters. On day 35 of the investigation, a key update emerged. According to the Pima County Sheriff's Department, investigators found a glove just over 2 miles from Nancy's home. Inside the glove, DNA. For a moment, the discovery raised hopes.
Developments in the search for Nancy Guthrie. The FBI says DNA from an unknown male has been recovered from a glove found about
for a potential break in this case, with the FBI now testing DNA lifted from a glove found 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home.
Follow-ups in the investigation into the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie.
DNA back, and that's why I say, well, they already have the genetic markers of those that we think had access to the home rightfully.
The Nancy Guthrie kidnapping case has entered a troubling and highly complex phase.
Because evidence found away from the scene can sometimes identify a suspect fleeing the area. But the results told a different story. Authorities say the DNA traced back to a restaurant employee who works near Nancy's home. And according to investigators, the employee is unrelated to the case, meaning the glove, once thought to be a possible breakthrough, may simply be unrelated evidence. This is one of the frustrating realities of major investigations. Not every clue is a clue. Sometimes an object found near a crime scene is exactly what it appears to be, a discarded glove, nothing more. But investigators are still testing other gloves discovered during the search. Those samples are now being processed at a private lab in Florida, and until those results return, the possibility of new forensic leads remains open.
Catalina foothills, Arizona, and capturing national attention. Recently surfaced footage is forcing investigators and the public alike.
Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of NBC Today anchor Savannah Guthrie, was apparently abducted from her Tucson area home. At least 16 gloves were collected from around the home during expanded searches, most belonging to search workers.
And the subject of my investigation is the case everyone is talking about, the tragic abduction of Nancy Guthrie.
One detail investigators emphasized recently may hold deeper significance. Authorities are asking anyone within a 2-mile radius of Nancy's home to review security footage from January 1st through February 2nd. That is a surprisingly large window, more than a full month of potential video evidence. Why request footage going back to January 1st? Because investigators may be looking for something specific, not the abduction itself, but preparation. If the masked individual was planning the crime, they may have visited the neighborhood earlier. Perhaps driving through, perhaps walking past the home, perhaps studying routines. And in cases like this, those earlier movements often appear on surveillance cameras, doorbells, garage cameras, street-facing security systems.
This morning, new questions about the timing of those chilling surveillance images of a masked suspect outside Nancy Guthrie's home on the...
This morning, we are learning Savannah Guthrie does intend to return to work at NBC's Today Show at some point in the future.
The scoop today, emotional moments on the set of NBC's Today Show. News Nation senior story editor.
Yeah, I love to invite him onto the show because, of course, he has that expertise that you can only get when you've worked in law enforcement and particularly in the FBI for years.
Every clip becomes part of a puzzle, and investigators know something important. Someone planning an abduction rarely appears only once. While investigators continue searching, the emotional weight of the case has become increasingly visible. On day 33, Savannah Guthrie and her family were seen laying flowers outside Nancy's home, a quiet memorial forming near the driveway, neighbors leaving notes, candles, small tokens of support. Savannah later posted on Instagram, "We feel the love and prayers," and she added a message to the public, "Please don't stop praying and hoping with us." 2 days later, Savannah made another significant step. She returned to the Today Show studio for the first time since her mother disappeared.
So it doesn't mean that this was a dry hole. This very likely could have been another step toward resolving this case because there's just so much we don't know behind the scenes.
Sitting in its holster looked like the work of an amateur, not a professional. So why was an 84-year-old woman the target?
Since our mom was taken in the dark of night from her bed.
Now been missing from her Tucson, Arizona home for more than 18 days, with investigators continuing to hold out hope that she is still alive.
But according to a spokesperson for the program, she is not yet returning fully to the broadcast. Right now, her focus remains on her family and helping bring Nancy home. That moment highlighted something investigators rarely discuss publicly. Behind every investigation, there is a family living through it in real time. As the case enters its 5th week, online speculation has grown louder. Some focus on the masked figure. Others question whether someone familiar with Nancy's routine could be involved. A few have even questioned whether investigators missed something at the scene, but authorities have repeatedly cautioned the public against speculation. According to investigators, the case remains active and complex, and details released publicly represent only a small fraction of the evidence being analyzed. That's typical. Law enforcement often withholds information in order to protect the integrity of the investigation.
She has a pacemaker, there's blood, her blood is on the house, when the front part of the house, so it's obviously very concerning that there hasn't been proof of life.
DNA evidence recovered from gloves found near Guthrie's home did not match any profiles in the FBI's National CODIS database.
The magic bullet, but it's one more thing to try and find this poor woman who's been missing now for what, almost in the 3rd week.
Nancy Guthrie has now been missing from her Tucson, Arizona home for more than 18 days, with investigators continuing to hold out hope that
But that silence can create space for theories, and theories can spread faster than evidence, which is why officials continue urging the public to focus on verifiable information. Security footage, tips, anything unusual within that 2-mile radius, because the smallest detail might still matter. Current status of the case. 35 days after Nancy Guthrie vanished, here is where the investigation stands. Authorities believe she was taken from her home. The masked individual captured on recovered images has not been identified.
We walked. He's got eyes now, and you think, well, what's that going to do? Well, now they can get other video, and with AI, you can get some very accurate way to compare a video to there as compared to have to a video at a Circle K. But best of all, leads are going to be pouring in, because if you know me, I may have a mask on, but if you know me...
Authorities detained a person of interest for questioning. This individual was later released without charges. A few days later, investigators conducted a major operation roughly 2 miles from Guthrie's home.
G'day, welcome back to Sunrise. We have new developments in the kidnapping of the famous American grandmother. Investigators in the Nancy Guthrie case have...
However, there's other types of DNA testing that we can do, specifically genetic gene.
Multiple DNA samples are still being analyzed. One glove discovered near the scene has been ruled unrelated. Additional gloves are being tested at a private laboratory. Investigators are still seeking surveillance footage from surrounding neighborhoods. No suspects have been publicly named, no arrests have been announced, and Nancy Guthrie remains missing. But investigators continue to emphasize one point. Cases like this are often solved through small details. A single camera clip, a license plate in the background, a passerby who noticed something unusual. Sometimes the answer is hiding in footage someone hasn't watched yet. 35 days. In the desert foothills of Tucson, the nights are quiet.
There is a major development in the search for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie.
FBI Director Kash Patel released images of a possible suspect in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
This morning, new questions about the timing of those chilling surveillance images of a masked suspect outside Nancy Guthrie's home on the morning she disappeared. Two law enforcement.
It is all speculative if for someone to suggest that that photo is from a different day. That's all it is speculation. We understand that
they remain here tonight. Now, the purpose of their presence here this evening, the Sheriff's Department telling NBC News they are continuing to conduct.
The streets are calm, and somewhere within those quiet streets, a piece of the story still hasn't surfaced. A glove turned out to be unrelated, a masked figure remains unidentified, and a family continues waiting for answers. Investigators are still reviewing evidence, still testing DNA, still asking neighbors to search their cameras, because sometimes the breakthrough in a case doesn't come from a lab. It comes from someone noticing something small, a car that passed twice, a stranger walking a street, a moment that didn't seem important at the time. And until that moment is found, the mystery of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance remains unfinished, but investigators believe the truth is out there, hidden somewhere in the quiet hours of January 31st, waiting for someone to see it.